Welcome to Say the World, an international writing podcast. I'm Mike Meginnis, the communications coordinator at the International Writing Program.
And I'm Christopher Merrill, the longtime director of the IWP, as we call it.
You're a longtime director this time. I think this is the first time you've officially declared yourself the longtime director on the podcast.
That's how you know when you're really getting old.
You start telling people, like, your eyes do not deceive you.
Yeah, I'm a little long in the tooth.
So this week's episode is going to mainly be an interview with Kevin Chen, who is a novelist from Taiwan. He's the author of Ghost Town, which has been translated and adapted in, I think, like every language on earth, basically, at this point. It's been a huge hit, and we really enjoyed having Kevin with us. He's a really big character, and you get a little taste of that with this interview.
I think the word might be colorful.
Yes. Colorful is absolutely a good one. And he talks in this conversation about the idea of gathering colors, is what he calls it, when you are doing, well, I think he would apply this to life experience in general, right? But he was especially talking about his career, because he's had a lot of different jobs and a lot of different interests that do sort of naturally lend themselves to fiction. And as I was going back through and editing this, I was thinking about the jobs that I've had that have contributed to my fiction, and they're a little bit less glamorous than his. You know, he has starred in films and has an interest in theater, and he mentions that he wishes he were an opera singer. And the main job that comes up for me pretty constantly is when I was in Iowa City, my first job actually here was developing materials for the ACT. I was a copy editor, and that didn't go great. And then I was working at a law firm for several years where I handled real estate transactions. And the thing that makes it into my stories over and over again is the experience of taking dictation, which I don't know if this is how it's done these days generally. This was a very old school machine, but I honestly can't imagine a better way of doing it. My boss would record on a little tape cassette a set of instructions for how to prepare a will or deed or whatever I was working on, and then I would listen back to it. And of course, I'm a very fast typist, but it doesn't matter how fast you type. You have to go back over and over and over again and slowly work your way through, especially with a legal document where the particulars matter, right? So, have you ever used one of these machines where you take dictation?
No.
Yeah, so it's a foot pedal
Yep.
attached to a tape cassette. And so when I would hold the pedal down, it would slowly move forward. And I'd listen to the gentleman who usually was giving my dictation in sort of slow motion. And then you release your foot and it would automatically rewind.
Oh,
And then you put your foot down again and it would start. And I spent hours and hours and hours taking dictation that way, typing these documents. And so mysteriously in my fiction, I keep finding that I need people to take dictation and it needs to be a big part of the work. And it's like, it's not amazing material, right? I wish it were something like starring in a movie or being a translator, interpreter. But instead, it's just this boring job I have. But I feel like the most boring jobs are often the thing that grounds a story so that you can get away with everything else. So I just keep using it.
yeah. Well, it has its own set of particulars that have a life of their own and suggest one wanting to live beyond that life. And for me, it's a little bit different because I write poetry, which is always a matter of inventiveness and music. But in my nonfiction, thinking about the various jobs I've had in my life as a soccer coach, working in a bookstore, working as a landscaper, as a caretaker. And when I wrote the book Self Portrait with Dogwood, which was a sort of disguised memoir refracted through, let's say, the lens of the dogwood tree, I suddenly remembered, oh, that's right. I worked all those years in that nursery outside of Seattle with the most colorful figure, who was a man who knew everything about botany, but he was also something of a scoundrel. And there were all these terrific stories I had the chance finally to tell. And I realized once again that no detail, no part of your experience is off limits when it comes time to write. And with respect to Kevin, it made me think once again about the story that Jerzy Kosinski used to go take other kinds of jobs in corporate America so that he could start taking notes for the next novel. It's what writers do. We're scavengers at heart, right?
Yeah, it's always exciting when you discover an opportunity to use and learn like new terms of art, right? Like anytime that you get connected with a new field and you get to see the particular ways of using language that are totally unique to that field and don't make sense outside of that context, but because there's like, decades, centuries of human history behind that particular usage, when you've learned it and internalized it and then you deploy it in your work, it's going to sound natural,
Yeah.
it's gonna lend it authority. It's such a precious resource when you get those opportunities.
Call me Ishmael, Melville says after a lifetime on the waters and the sea, and he accumulated that store of knowledge that he transformed into something amazing.
Well, with that, let's hear from Kevin.
Yep.
鬼地方第一部，妈妈不见了，第一排透天错。
Chapter 1 The First Row of Townhouses.
从哪里来？那是 T 给他的第一个问题。T 给过他很多很多，一本德国护照，一个新家，逃离的机会，许多的疑问。一开始 T 好爱问，家乡长什么样子？几个兄弟姐妹？岛屿的夏天有多热？岛屿有蝉吗？有蛇吗？树木长什么样子？树的名字是什么？有没有河流？还是运河？何时为雨季？有没有水灾？土壤肥沃吗？种植什么？为什么不能陪他回去参加丧礼？为什么想家？为什么回家？为什么不回家？
Where are you from? That was the first question T asked him. T gave him a lot: a German passport, a new home, an escape route, and a lot of questions. Right from the start, T liked to ask questions. What's your hometown like? How many brothers and sisters do you have? How hot does it get on the island in the summertime? Are there cicadas? What about snakes? What do the trees look like? What are they called? Are there any rivers? What about canals? When is the rainy season? Are there ever any floods? Is the soil fertile? What all gets planted? Why can't I accompany you to your father's funeral? Why go home? Why not go home? The question marks caught on his hair and nicked his skin. T's questions were hard to answer, so he didn't. He dodged or lied until his made-up biography was full of holes and contradictions, like a badly written novel. And so he wrote one.
问号扯法，歌夫很难答，于是不想答。闪避罗织谎言，编织的身世有许多漏洞，前后矛盾。过往是一本写坏的小说，写小说第一章聚焦一张桌子，桌子上放了一把枪、两把刀、三本日记。枪总得在后来的章节激发，刀子也该刮、该削。打开日记就解开了故事谜底，但他的人生小说杂乱无序，写着写着就忘了枪刀日记，导致一直想到凌乱桌面上的其他杂物垃圾，不断写无关紧要的线索。墙上贴的海报，猩红小短裤，套了塑胶袋的脸，人坏了，小说一起腐坏，漏洞百出。
The first chapter opened with a table on which a few objects had been placed: one gun, 2 knives, and 3 diaries. The gun would have to be fired in a subsequent chapter. The knives should be used to dismember and flay, and the diaries would solve the riddle at the heart of the story. But the novel of his life was a total mess. He wrote and forgot about the guns, the knives, and the diaries. Instead, he obsessed over an assortment of trash that was strewn on the table and littered his narratives with irrelevant clues, like a mural on a factory wall, a pair of bright red shorts, and a face with a plastic bag over it. When a person is rotten, his novel will be too, full of holes.
Hello, I'm Kevin Chen, a Taiwanese novelist. I was born and raised in a very small hometown in central Taiwan, which is called Yongjing. And this small town is actually my writing motif. It just happens all the time in many of my novels because that's where I'm from. I'm from a crazy, crazy big family. I have 7 sisters and 1 brother. I was the 9th. Just think about that. Just look at the number. You know that I was born in an amazing source of a story. That's why I became a writer. That's what I always tell myself. And I'm just happy to be part of the international writing program because that's where I am now. I'm in Iowa City with a bunch of lovely writers, and we spend days and nights together. We hate each other, we love each other, and just wonderful. So thank you for having me.
Kevin, in your reading here at Prairie Lights Bookstore, you talked about your frustration over people assuming the book you wrote, Ghost Town, from which you just read, was literally autobiographical. And so I want to ask you about what the relationship is between autobiography and fiction, and really what is the power and what are the risks of winking at one's biography in a novel?
Oh my God. Okay, so actually, this term autofiction is brand new for me. I never knew this term until I published a book, and then it was published in the U.S. That a professor in UCLA told me, "Oh, your book is an autofiction." I was like, "What? What? What's that? I've never heard of that." So obviously, it's a piece of fiction that has autobiographical elements, And my name is Kevin Chen. The protagonist in the book is Keith Chen. So you do see some similarities there, and he has 5 sisters. I have 7. And he's gay. I'm gay as well. He's the youngest. I'm the youngest as well. So you do see some autobiographical elements over there, which I would never deny because I do believe that I cannot speak for every writer. I do believe that every writer in this world, the very comfortable starting point for writing is actually from self because that's how we begin. Because, a lot of people who are not in this profession, they always imagine that, oh, well, you just, you read a piece of news or something, the newspaper, or you just saw some reports on CNN, that you can make up something, which is not true, because if it's not connected to you at all, it's really difficult to conjure up a brand new world. Because for me, it's literally impossible.
A believable world.
Yes, yeah, a believable world, and for me, to be believable is that it's totally the point because then I have to be truthful to myself. So it's a piece of fiction, but I would have to quote one of my favorite writers in the world, the Indian writer and the Booker Prize winner, Dante Roy, who wrote The God of Small Things, and a Minister of Utmost Happiness. Crazy, crazy fan. So I went to a lot of her readings, and in one of her readings in Berlin, she said this, and that's the thing I took away from her reading. She said, "Fiction is truth." I was like, yes, that's exactly what I believe when I'm writing as well. So, yes, this book has a lot of truth in there, but I want to, tell my truth in the form of a fiction. And I just didn't know that people would take it, I mean, like literally, that this is a confession of a murderer, that because I never killed any people, but Keith Chen, obviously, in the opening chapter, he killed someone because he spent time in a jail in Berlin and he's doing homecoming journey, because he has nowhere to go. And people actually believed that, including my cousin, and it's just crazy. But now, over time, I kind of take it as a compliment. That means this reading has become some sort of immersive experience or something that they're so into it that they believe it's a confession, that it's a memoir or autobiography. The thing is, when I'm in a bookstore, like in Iowa City, we have this beautiful bookstore called Prairie Lights. When I'm there, usually the memoir or biography or autobiography section is not the section that I usually go to. It's not really on my reading radar because, I actually worked as a writer. I was on a team of ghostwriters. We had to create a biography for a politician in Taiwan. And the material we gather and the things the mission that we had to do, because it was for the campaign, of course. Politicians come when they're doing a campaign, they publish biographies so that they can push to win. And that's what happened. So we got a commission, which is, actually paid handsomely. Actually, that's why I took the job. Our names will never be mentioned. No one will ever know that we were part of that ghostwriting team. And then eventually we had to create a biography that is just wrong. That is simply not true because he had to look good. It's a he, yeah. He had to look good. So basically, it's a photoshopping writing experience. So everything has to be beautiful and glorious, And there were simply so many misinformations. We had to twist. We were, demanded to twist the truth and to make sure that everything is simply glorified and is sung out loud. And it was just a horrible, horrible experience. I walked away with some happy money, but then I realized, oh my God, I will never go back there. And somehow that created some kind of a traumatic experience that I will never, go back to that reading experience because I was part of that writing experience to create something that is totally fake. And he won that whole thing, and that book became a sort of a best-selling book in Taiwan. And our names were never mentioned, which is great because I don't want to have anything to do with. Actually, nobody in Taiwan knows about this. I'm talking about this in Iowa. I never talked about this in Taiwan. Yeah, because I don't want people to know that I was connected to that project. Yeah. So that experience writing as a ghostwriter, because I do believe that profession of a ghostwriter is a very interesting profession. It's a very, very big thing here in America. It's like Prince Harry. He hired this very expensive, very successful ghostwriter. We all know his name. And he wrote this amazing memoir for him and became this big hit, in the market. And I read a little bit and I was like, oh my God, this is just, full of crap. Because I was part of that experience. I know, it's all about manipulating the information you have and it has very little to do with the truth. So Ghost Town is my way of telling my truth. It's fictional, but I'm not saying that because it's fictional, that means fake. It's not. And then I always have new readers, and they always came to me and asked me which part of the book is real. And I just want them to define for me what is real. Please tell me what is real. And of course, nobody has that answer. But for sure, I know what's fake. Yeah. And I don't want to go there. So I'm just, staying with my truth and telling my truth. And hopefully that people would be able or would be interested enough just to pick up a copy and go into my world.
Well, I'm glad that we got to the part early where you explained that you hadn't killed anyone. We actually ask every writer, have you committed murder? Just to get them on the record that they haven't. And you've saved us a tremendous amount of time by jumping directly to
And
the
Mike,
answer.
you believe that we'll tell you the truth.
No. But this, it covers us. I haven't either. Yeah, it seems like the example that you're giving there sort of illustrates the benefit of fiction over memoir in that because all of it is disclaimable,
Yeah.
because you're not really responsible for any of it, because you can always say that any of it is not true.
Yeah.
You have that opportunity to put in as much true embarrassing stuff as you want.
Yeah.
Whereas the alternative is if you're doing a memoir, especially a political memoir,
Yeah.
the incentive is the opposite, right?
Yeah.
But at the same time, this was the thing that was interesting to me because, knowing writers, you see the full spectrum of ways of negotiating this problem of using your own life and using your own material.
Yeah.
And it could have been the main character could have been named Stephen.
Yeah.
He could have had a totally different surname.
Yeah.
He could have had a totally different number of sisters.
Yeah.
And you chose not to do those
No.
things to point back a little bit at the authenticity. So that's the thing that's interesting to me about that is the particular balance that you chose to strike in terms of here are some clues
Mhm.
that there is some reality to that. I'm curious how you chose like the clues you were going to give and how you like your stance in relationship to that.
First of all, I just came back actually from Toronto because I was there for the Toronto International Festival of Authors, and Crazy enough, I said yes to a job there. I was the mentor or whatever of a writing workshop, and it's not just regular people. These are high school teenagers, from 5 different high schools in Toronto, and I was like, okay, this is bound to be to be a failing experience because high school kids. When I was a high school kid, I never listened to people. Yeah, and and they're the most difficult creatures in the world, and we all know that because we used to be one. But when I was there, this just turned out to be an amazing experience because they're really really engaged. They want to be writers, and so we were talking about this because people did ask me. Obviously, some kids actually read my book, before they came to the workshop, and they asked me about this choice of names and stuff. And so, I got some name related questions. The first one was, "Dear Mr. Chen, how do you name your characters?" And I said, "I don't know." Because naming your characters, as Mike, I'm sure you know, is a very difficult thing. You have to give them names that would actually mean something, and you don't want to be, too spontaneous or too sloppy about that. And I said, I don't know. So when it comes to my way of naming them, when it comes to this fiction, I'm very lazy. So I choose names that are actually very close to me. And I
Yeah.
wanted to confuse people. And then there came the second question. And then, the second young writer asked me, said, "Oh, would that bother you and your family? Because it has this autobiographical elements." And yeah, and I said, yeah, yeah, yes and no. Because first of all, okay, this Ghost Town was my 8th book in Taiwan, and before that, my career was okay-ish. It was not going anywhere, and I get awards, like I mentioned, but it never really took off. And but the people who always supported me were my sister, so they always bought like really stacks of my books. But they will never read my books. As a matter of fact, the feedback that I got was, "Oh my God, can you read something that's readable, not so literary? Can you please write something that human beings are happy to read, something that gives people joy, not tears and pain?" Uh,
I've heard this speech.
Yes, obviously. But this book they actually really read. All my sisters actually did it because when this book started to take off in Taiwan for some crazy reason, people went to them and like neighbors and relatives said, "Oh my God, your brother wrote about you in this horrible way," and they were like, "He did what?" And then they went back to the book and they read the text, and I was, "Oh my God, this is going to be terrible." But like for example, the feedback I got from my second sister, because there's a second sister in the book as well. She read the book and she came back to me and said, "I'm nothing like her. She's a terrible person. I'm not." I said, "Yeah, sister, of course you're right. You're not a terrible person." And then I got away with that. And another experience was I was having lunch with my third sister, and I wrote actually a few pages in the book was very much based on what actually happened to her. And she was just okay. We were having lunch, and I was late, and I got in, and she was reading that chapter, those pages. I was like, "This lunch is not going to a good place, obviously." And she just was reading, and I said, "Oh, sister, we should start ordering now, just to make sure that we stop reading." And she said, "No, I'm gonna read your book, and I'm gonna finish this chapter." I said, "Oh, this is bad." And then she just finished that chapter, and she just put down the book and turned to me and said, "Gosh, this sister is such a bitch." And I was like, What? Oh, okay, I yeah, I value your opinions, but the thing is that was very much based on her. And yeah, and she couldn't see that because she couldn't see herself. I realized that because it's like, you don't see. It's I remember this thing when back in high school, some kids were imitating me because we had a stupid party, like a pizza party, and we were doing this game, imitate someone in the room, and people were laughing like crazy when someone was doing me on the stage. I was the only one who didn't realize that whole thing was about me.
Yeah.
So actually, yes and no. So the bother my book did, cause some, I don't know, situations for them. But at the end of the day, they were still very proud of that because then they actually got interviewed and they were featured in the magazines, and they just, yeah, they love that very much because a traditional like conservative Taiwanese family like mine, we don't talk about feelings. We don't say I love you. We don't say I'm proud of you. I don't know if you know this movie by Ann Lee, like in the 90s. The Taiwanese director Ann Lee did a film called Eat, Drink, Man, and Woman. And if you don't know that, please go to see that. It was actually nominated for an Oscar, actually. And that film is very much, it's so authentic because it's about a Taiwanese family, which always has this Sunday ritual of gathering for food. And that's what happened to my family as well. The way we give emotions, the way we take emotions, the way we say, I love you or I hate you or I want to poison you or I want to kill you is through food. And we connect with each other by food. And that's what happened because I like after this book was honored with some prestigious literature awards in Taiwan. We sat down and had food. We never talked about the award or the book, but we ate, and I knew that was I'm proud of you, yeah, and that's great.
So you mentioned films, and I know you had a long career acting in films and dance, and have worked as a foreign correspondent. You've had a bunch of different lives, if you will. One of the films you acted in is titled Ghosted.
Yes.
So I wonder if you could talk a little bit about the arc of your creative life, if you will, and if there are things you still hope to try,
Yeah.
different forms.
Oh, yeah. Well, first of all, I would love to be a opera singer for sure. You know, I it's something that will never come true, but I just always imagine even when I was a kid, I want to be a tenor in the opera house, you know, in Vienna, in Berlin, in New York, just to sing some Puccini. I still do that, even in Iowa, you know, by the river, you know, and I annoy some people, you know, some joggers were like, "Oh my god, what is this crazy Asian guy singing?" Yeah, but back to my career, I was really acting because I worked years in Taiwan as a theater actor, and then moved to Germany in Berlin at year 2004. And strange enough, Ghosted, that film was really interesting. I was actually hosting, I was a moderator for a film event in Berlin Film Festival. So, like, every country is promoting their own films, their cinemas, right? I mean, America doesn't have to do that because we have Hollywood. But, you know, Hollywood is a very, very special system. But we don't have that at all in Taiwan. So we have to promote our cinema. And so to promote that in a film festival, we have to have a party. And I just happened to be there and they gave me the job because I'm a talkative, crazy person. So I was doing that. And after that, a German director came to me and said, "Do you act?" And I said, "Honey, I studied theater and acting. I went to drama school. I do." And then she gave me a part. That's how I started this whole thing. And this film was eventually nominated to be in the film festival, Berlin Film Festival as well. So I did a whole red carpet and Q&A and this, interview and stuff, and it's really a crazy experience. And that sort of was, that just happened. I don't know. I still don't know what that happened. And then I started to audition and I started to TV sitcoms. I did some prank shows and I did some commercials and I was in other different films. And it was just a very colorful experience because when you work as an actor on set, you are being pampered. They take care of you. They don't want you to get sick. They don't, when you're having lunch, they make sure they have a bib on you so you don't soil your costume. You have, a trailer where you can nap and really makeup people, costume people, everybody is taking care of you. And you feel like, oh my gosh, so this is what being Beyonce is like, and this is really silly. And then, when you're writing, it's a totally different experience because when you're writing, you're by yourself. No one's pampering you. As a matter of fact, even if you have the biggest agent in the world and you have the biggest, I don't know, advanced check in the world, you're still on your own, when you're writing, and that's a totally different feeling. But when I was acting, that was really teamwork. You have to work with everybody. And I learned so much from it. That you have to talk to people. You have to make sure that your work is going to be presented out there. So you want to make sure that you are a good guy, but you gotta voice your opinions as well because you want to make sure that you're not just a puppet. And also as Chris just said, I was working as a foreign correspondent, and that was amazing. First of all, to have a press badge, press ID, it's just you can go to any places in the world. Like I don't know about America, but with an official EU issued press ID, I can get into every museum for free. This job brought me to so many places because I got to interview interesting politicians, interesting people, interesting artists, and all these things. And it really, really, I mean, really, that was an eye-opening experience. And so that I think that, and those two jobs, they really helped me so much. And I just want to mention another job that I've been doing. I'm still doing that. I'm actually working as an interpreter. I don't do so much translation, but I do a lot of oral translation. I have a lot of interesting experiences, and I have translated for a lot of like big politicians and been translating for a lot of stars in the film festival as well. And so these experiences really brought me to places, and they really gave me colors, and I could always use them in my book when I'm writing because we need colors. And so I think to this day I'm still coloring, meaning writing, because I gather a lot from that. I don't have a press ID anymore because I quit that job. I stopped auditioning because auditioning, I mean, seriously, I mean, acting is a, if you think writing is a horrible career choice, acting is even worse. Yeah, because you have to go to all these auditions and they judge you just in 30 seconds. They want to take shots of you, like front, sides, even sometimes from the top, and sometimes they ask you to lie down, so they take shots of you, and then they ask you to do things, and they give you 30 seconds or maybe 5 minutes, and they would determine your fate, just like that. They don't want to get to know you. And I remember this thing. I was my task. I had to prepare a monologue from Macbeth, and not speaking as Macbeth, but Lady Macbeth. When the part when she's washing her hands, like we all know, and I prepared. I memorized everything. I prepared the English one, the German one. When I was there, they just ditched that. They wanted me to do a backflip instead. And I was like, excuse me? What I can do a Shakespeare monologue, but what backflip? I know what this casting director said to me. Oh, you cannot do a backflip? Strange, but you're Asian.
Huh.
Yeah, that happened to me. See, and I've had so many disastrous auditioning experiences, and because now see, we're here in the States, we're always talking about representation. Asian representation in Germany simply is not there. It doesn't exist. So we get all these stupid parts, and there comes a point that where I just had to stop. I have to stop because this is too bad, and interesting enough, the moment that I told my agent that okay, I'm gonna terminate this contract, I'm not gonna doing that. I just want to give myself a break because I'm sick of this auditioning, experiences, and I just want to focus on writing. And I got this really crazy contract with my publisher in Taiwan, and so I wanted to focus on my writing. And then I finished Ghost Town, and here I am in Iowa for this book. So so maybe sometimes making sure that you cut off something and just can move on to the next thing was a good decision. I was brave enough to cut off that thing, and I'm still very happy that I made that choice.
What I'm taking from this is that in order to be more successful as an author, I need to briefly become somewhat successful as an actor. Give that up,
No,
and then I'll be a big deal.
no, Mike. What I can tell you is that sometimes we have to throw ourselves, out there to do something different.
Yeah.
I don't know. It could be bungee jumping, skydiving or something. Because we all are in our comfort zones. We know that we are very comfortable, in our couch, in our beds, or in this recording studio or whatever, And then if we have a chance to really throw ourselves out there, it could be just a public speaking opportunity, or I don't know, joy. I'm just saying something crap. It could be just a drag, a race experience or something, because it's about crossing different boundaries. Because that's what happened to me. Working as a journalist, as a foreign correspondent, or as an actor, it really brought me to so many interesting dramatic boundaries, and they really helped me a lot as a writer.
You talk about gathering colors for your
Yes.
writing and your different experiences. Could you talk about what colors maybe you're gathering from your time in Iowa City?
Oh my gosh, there's so many colors. I agreed to come here. I knew nothing about this town. I mean, okay, because IWP is honestly very, very wildly popular in Taiwan. A lot of writers want to be here, and as a matter of fact, a lot of prestigious writers that we look up to, they have been here, and years later, even 2 decades later, they're still talking about their experiences here in Iowa. So it's like a thing that you should do if you are a writer that you want to be part of this program. So I was like, okay, so it's my turn. It's great, but I should, look up this place. So I use Google Map, and I use different sources and stuff, And the thing is, that's that kind of virtual Googling experience. They never justify really. So the colors I gather here was, first of all, is like this eternal summer. It's like, because people promise us autumn and even winterly weather, because people told us that it's going to get cold. Make sure you bring some sweater and make sure you bring a proper jacket or something. But when we got here, I remember like there was a few days it was 108 Fahrenheit, and I'm like, excuse me, and that experience, that color I took away was, first of all, was pain. It was purely pain. It was painful. It was simply too hot, and the heat. I was like, this is not making any sense, because I was like, okay, when I look at the Iowa City in the map, on the map, right? It's pretty much in the north. I was like, why is it so scorching? So yeah, I gotta love, burning colors so far. And I was away for a few days for Toronto and New York. I just came back, and yesterday was a hot day as well. So far, the strongest color I took away was that heat. And strange enough, because I've been told by other writers who have been here in Iowa, they always told me about this beautiful autumnly color, which I'm looking forward to, because I love cold weather. I cannot stand heat. And so, Chris, I will have to come back to you about the colors I gather in Iowa so far in 3 months, because I think memories are so important for me, because when you're in the thick of it, you don't really see clearly. So I have to get out, and looking back, and I will show you an email. It could be an angry email telling you that, why did you prepare that weather for us, or it's just a lovely, happy email full of fun, laughter, and memories, and joy and delight. Yeah. So let's see in 3 months.
Yeah, the weather is we're waiting for autumn too. We're also actually a little surprised, I think, by the way things have gone this year. But
Yeah.
can you tell us about what you're working on here?
Oh my God. I actually, in spring, I just finished a brand new novel, which will be published in December in Taiwan. So I'm actually going back to Taiwan December to publish this new book. So I've been, we've been editing this novel, but like the first few weeks when I just got here, I was actually reading this novel that I finished in spring. And it's really interesting experience, because as I was reading that with a distance, because I finished that in spring and now I'm here. So it's like 6 months apart. And then I'm reading it. Someone gave me some kind of validation that, okay, this is not crap. Okay, we can publish it. Yeah, so this is great. So that was great. And then I'm moving on to the next one. I've been playing with the idea of writing a fiction about three sisters, because I love the dynamics of three sisters. My favorite play of Chekhov, the Russian playwright, was Three Sisters, of course. And as a matter of fact, when I was an actor, my biggest dream was to do. I want to play one of the sisters on stage as a drag actor. It never came true. When I was pitching the idea to a director, he just looked at me like with disgust, like, "What? Put that into your crazy head." Yeah, so I'm actually starting to work on a brand new piece of fiction about three sisters, and I've been taking notes. I've been doing a lot of people watching actually on the street, and we talked about I'm gathering some colors. My ways of keeping these germs for my writing is I jot things down, I record things, I gather stupid things, but they always become very, very convenient and helpful when I'm writing. So
Is there a period of note taking before you actually sit down to write? This is the period of note taking.
yes, this is a very important period. And I would start like, a few paragraphs, but I need to get into it. I need to get to know the characters. That, for example, these three sisters. So I'm trying to get to know them. So I need to find their voices. So this is something I actually took away from filming as an actor, because to create a character. So let's say in 40 years, they're making a biopic about you, your life in Iowa, and the cast an actor to play you, and they have to get into all the details, the fabric of your shirts, the color of your hair, your glasses, the shoes, and the way you talk, your voice, the recording, all these things, and these are just, external facts. I have to go deep as well, and the accents and the origin and the backgrounds, and that's what I do with all the three sisters. That's how my note taking stage goes. That I want to get to know them by gathering all these notes. And when I
Do they have names yet?
no, no. This is the worst. I hate that.
They'll all be named
terrible.
Keith.
Oh yeah, so the names are actually the most difficult part, so I don't know. As a matter of fact, so interesting enough, the book I just finished in spring, the one that I finished and reading again here in Iowa, it's two protagonists, and it's eventually I was so lazy, I was so bad, so it just became he and she, and that's it. Yeah, and strange enough, I revealed their name in a strange way in the very final chapter. Their names only came about in the very last chapter in a different form. Yeah, so I cannot tell you that because it's like one of the revelations I will have to do for the end of the book. But yeah, so eventually I went for he and she. That's how bad I was, and yeah, but turned out it was a good choice for me as well. So no, they don't have names.
Say the World, an international writing podcast, is a production of the International Writing Program at the University of Iowa. IWP programming is primarily funded by the University of Iowa and the Bureau of Educational and Cultural Affairs at the U.S. Department of State, with additional funding provided by organizations like the Doris Duke Foundation, as well as donors like you. If you'd like to donate to the IWP, go to bit.ly/IWP-support. Links to further information and additional credits for this episode are in the show notes.